This is my ode to the original 42mm Planet Ocean. This is the 2500 caliber, reference 2201.50. I don't currently have it on the stock bracelet, but I will put it on there for parts of this video. And I just want to talk about what makes this watch great, why, if you're considering a Planet Ocean at all, or an Omega Diver period, this is an excellent one to track down. And basically just everything I love about it, both the features that people probably already know about, and also some of the underrated features that some people may not know about. So number one, overarching point is that this is basically one gigantic homage to the Seamaster 300 165.024. That watch, and in some ways, this is a return to form for Omega. This came out in 2005, if I'm not mistaken. They came out in 45 and 42 millimeter. This is the 42 millimeter variant. And at that point, you know, the history of Omega, people know they hadn't been doing great. There was the quartz crisis. They were one of the two founding members, if I'm not mistaken, who formed the Swatch group that then, you know, bought other, I think it was Tissot and Omega that formed the Swatch group. I can't remember. Some nerds will come up with that. But then the Bond Seamaster came out. That pretty much rescued Omega. And then this watch came out in 05. And in some ways, I think this and the Peter Blake are the return to form that Omega performed there in the late 90s to early 2000s. This came out in 05. And so this watch is a giant homage to the entire Seamaster diver history, but specifically the 165.024. So what is it about this watch that's so appealing? Well, number one of my favorite things is the open 6 and 9 numerals. And so I've said that recently to someone, they had no idea what I was talking about. So the 6 and the 9 forms do not close. They do not connect back on themselves. And it's a wonderful feature that harkens back to 1960s divers. I think it's a very playful sort of thing to do. I say playful. If you look at the current 8900 caliber that Omega makes of the Planet Ocean, the current 8900 has squared numerals, which, you know, the pros and cons of that are that the diving scale has more squared giant numerals. So now that the numerals match on the dial and on the diving scale, okay, I can see that. But I think that loses some of the charm and the humanistic touch of these original dive watch, of these original softer, rounded numerals. I love the playfulness of this. I say playfulness, maybe that's not the right word, but it's a little bit more quirky. And I really appreciate that. Seamaster 300 Heritage that Omega makes, the 41 millimeter version, has the open numerals. Obviously, famously, like the Panerai watches have those, and other watches have had them, so it's not like Omega invented them or anything. But I just love that, and that's it. Like I said, it just brings a lot of personality. The other thing that makes it a 165.024 homage is the wedge shape hour markers. So compared to, say, the Bond Seamaster, which I'm wearing the current version, compared to the Bond Seamaster, which is the ceramic version, this has alternating circles and rectangles, which is, you know, the Blancpain had that, the Submariner had that. It's great, got great legibility underwater, you know, and at night, and when it's just loomed up, it's dark, you can tell which is 12 o'clock instantaneously. So this is the style that came with the Bond Seamaster. But Omega before that in the 60s had this. This was the kind of the design that they had settled on after 2 or 3 iterations of the original Seamaster 300 as part of the trilogy in 1957. So the wedge shape hour markers, but it being, you know, the 2000s and them going more luxurious as a brand, they're applied rather than just painted on, which was a trend that they did for everything. In 2006, when they came out with the 2220.80, which was the update to the Bond Seamaster with the coaxial escapement, they used applied hour markers, and here the same. Now, the next generation after this, the 8500 caliber, they added applied numerals as well, which I really, really like. But that generation made it too thick. And that's another thing about this particular watch that I appreciate. And that is, it's only 14.2 millimeters thick, which is hilarious to say. But when you know, it's giant and it's thick compared to, say, the original Bond Seamaster that it was sold alongside as kind of like the next step up in terms of a serious diver. But in comparison to today's models, or, you know, the 8500 model, where it went for the 42 model, it went from 14.2 like this is to, I believe it was 16, so a full 1.5 millimeters thicker. This wears quite slim. If you compare it to a Speedmaster, which shares its sort of similar heritage and similar case shape, they both measure about that same thickness. Now, because the Speedmaster does not have the dive rating, much of the, a significant more portion of that comes from the domed crystal. This is the Heslite model of the Speedmaster. So the thickness there, if you were actually to compare, just say bezel to bezel or something, this would actually wear thinner. But we'll compare it here to this here in a second. So the open Arabic numerals. Now let's talk about these hands. The handset is 2 broad arrows, and this is an interesting choice. Some people don't like it. If you wanted to really make an homage, you would put obviously the sword hand for the hour hand, and you'd put the baton hand for the minute hand. People who love the Peter Blake, that's what they love because it's got sword hands. I've never liked the sword hands of the Peter Blake. I think that the way that they were rendered is just a little bit weird. I prefer the old vintage ones. I think those look much better. But this has double broad arrow hands, and so let's talk about that. Well, number one, the broad arrow hand for the hour that's why this is not just a straight replica of the 165.024. The broad arrow hand harkens back to the first 1957 Seamaster trilogy, which had a broad arrow hand like the Speedmaster did, the very first Speedmaster did. But there was a transitional period as they went from the original shark pointed hour markers of the original 1957 Seamaster 300. They went to wedge shape hour markers, and in that transition, they switched from having a broad hour hand to a broad arrow minute hand. And so this kind of smashes those two together and keeps that 165.024 wedge shape hour markers, but then just says, you know what, to heck with it, let's just do all of it. All the things, both double broad arrows. So everyone obviously knows that the Planet Ocean has maintained that double broad arrow. But here's a secret feature that I've never seen anybody reference anywhere. And that is the secret hidden sword hands. So everybody loves the sword hands of the 165.024. But if you get up close and you look, you'll see that the Lume markers on this are sword shaped, but they're just inverted. So the sword, as if the largest part of the sword, towards the tip of it would be, the larger end would be at the end of the hour hand or the minute hand. And on here, they're facing inwards towards the center of the watch. But can you see? And let me change the time so you can maybe see it a little bit closer. You can see that both minute and hour hands have the shape of the Lume is a sword but inverted. And this is their sneaky, and like I said, very subtle because I've never seen anybody reference this, sneaky reference to the 165.024 while still maintaining its own modern identity. And I think that's fantastic. Now the thing is, later generations switched to much more legible, just straight strips, and I've owned a 8500 Planet Ocean in the 37 millimeter size, and that is actually more legible. It's easier to read it quickly at a glance. This, because the Lume strip does not connect the broad arrows to the actual sword shape, there's a little bit of a gap there in a distance. It takes a second to kind of read the time. The modern ones, the 8500 and the 8900, are much better at that. But that is just an absolutely really cool feature that Omega did that does not get enough press that I wanted to point out because I think it's really cool. Other things, of course, let's talk about the downside. I personally don't mind the helium escape valve on this watch. I think because of the case shape, it kind of adds a little bit of a pleasant counterbalance to the asymmetric case. On this, I do think it's less than ideal. It doesn't need it. I think this case shape, which is basically the same as this case shape, which is basically the same as this case shape, this classic asymmetric with the asymmetric case on the right to protect the crown, that's classic. Omega did not need to screw with that. So if I had my druthers, I would have them remove that. But overall, this watch is fantastic. The thickness at 14.2 millimeters is very, very wearable. It is the modern 939 millimeter model is just slightly thinner at 14.16 if I'm not mistaken, which is really also wearable, but that's a much more squat size, and I think the proportions of that watch are slightly weird. I feel like the handset's a little bit too thick and chunky for the size of the dial, etc. But there's other benefits that I think it's one of those things where if you just get whatever you get used to, then you think is normal. I bought this watch because I'm a huge Omega fan, and I was actually considering buying one of the WatchCo Seamasters. If you're not familiar with the WatchCo Seamasters, I'll link the story below. The WatchCo Seamaster is a modern build. WatchCo is an Australian company, a watch company that would buy from Omega service parts for the original 165.024 one at a time, and then assemble them together into a brand new watch with brand new gaskets and everything. And then they would take vintage movements that had the same movement, I think it was the 552, from actual vintage watches, take the movement out and put it in the newly assembled case. And then they were selling them, and I don't know what they cost. Omega wisened up to it and put a stop to it. But the WatchCo Seamasters are still out there, and you can still buy them. And I considered buying one. They've gone up in price to about $5,000 when I was looking at them. I think back in the day they were more like $3,000 or $2,500, and I was very strongly considering buying one because that's kind of the ultimate Omega watch. And I'm very patiently waiting and hoping that Omega, if they update their Seamaster 300 Heritage, or if they introduce a new range part of the Planet Ocean, or whatever it is that they're going to do, because they do need to compete with Tudor's Pelagos 39 millimeter titanium watch that is kind of eating Omega's lunch in this product category. 39 millimeters, it's very thin at 12 point something millimeters thick. Omega needs to address that niche, and the Planet Ocean is too thick. Nobody needs 600 meters of dive resistance, of water resistance. So my opinion is their ultimate weapon would be a 165.024 reissue. It could be 12 millimeters thick. It would have the same case shape as the Speedmaster. It would not have a helium escape valve, and it could be, even if it was still the same 42 millimeters. We all know 42 millimeters on a Speedmaster on a Planet Ocean is not actually 42 millimeters because the crown guards add 2 millimeters. So it would very comfortably compete with something like what Tudor is doing with the Pelagos 39. I'm very patiently waiting for them. So the only thing that would get me to get rid of this Planet Ocean is if Omega released the 165.024 reissue, or if they updated the Seamaster 300 Heritage and made it in that style, with sword hands and complete everything. That's the only thing that would get me to sell this. I would sell this instantly to fund a purchase of that if they did that. So I have a roughly 7-inch wrist, and I think it wears really well. I say roughly 7 because I think if you measure up here where it goes on my bone, that's 7. But if you measure down below, it's 6 3/4. But it's not too giant. It's not, the thickness is totally fine. Let me throw them on those different bracelets and talk for a second. Okay, here it is on the original stock bracelet. This is a very comfortable, nice kind of rounded look. I don't love it on this bracelet, and I'll tell you why. Overall, I just feel like it gives the whole watch a very rounded look. I like the male end links. A lot of people don't like male end links because they make the lug tip to lug tip wear bigger. Because this watch fits me fine, it doesn't bother me. But it just gives it an overall rounded look. But it's a really high quality, very comfortable bracelet. A lot of people don't like that this clasp does not have any micro adjustment. On this bracelet, it doesn't bother me. I wear my watches really loose. I say really loose, but like pretty loose. And this is a very smooth, comfortable, so it slides up and down my wrist, and it's no problem. So on the bracelet, the stock bracelet is a really solid option. And of course, that's kind of how it's been designed to be worn. So if you can get a good fit, or you like to wear it slightly loose like me, or overall just like you it doesn't bother you that it doesn't have micro adjust. Some people have bought the different clasps that do have micro adjust and done, I think from the 8500 caliber on, they did have micro adjust. Some people have swapped out the clasps, but it's very comfortable. No complaints from me. I just don't love the look as much. But let me put it on the Flatlink from Forstner because that is my favorite way to wear it. Okay, now here it is on the contemporary Flatlink bracelet, all brushed from Forstner. And the reason I love this is that it really, really leans into that vintage 165.024 feel that this watch has. Now the end links here are the ones that Forstner sells in this bracelet for the pre-2018 Bond Seamaster, and it fits really well. I have close-up images of how well the end links fit. It's not like bespoke fit, but it's so good in daily practice that like it doesn't look bad. This bracelet is also really comfortable. I wear it really, really loose. Like I wear it pretty loose like everything else, but it just really gives it that vintage look that the modern one, because it's totally flat, it counteracts that curvaceous sort of look that the stock bracelet gives it. And this has female end links, so which everyone does typically love, and I'm actually kind of the odd man out on that. But that more squared off look of the Flatlink, I think, works really well with this. This has a double milled push button clasp, and this bracelet's $185. So this is the contemporary Flatlink Forstner. I will link it below with the pre-2018 Bond Seamaster end links. It looks really good. However, this watch also looks really good on different mesh bracelets. So let me put it on one of those. Okay, so here it is on a really crappy third-party aftermarket bracelet company on a shark mesh, what they call shark mesh bracelet. What I like about this is that at the end, it's just shark mesh. There's no smooth bar at the end, and this gives it a really, really cool sort of like, not aggressive, but like just a very cool vintage diver. Again, it leans into a different era or different style of vintage diver, but I really like it. This shark mesh has adjustable links in it so that you can get a decent fit. I like how it looks. Again, this is a cheap, junky one. This is a polished version. I think brushed would look better, and the clasp is a piece of trash. I'm not even going to say who it is because it's so crappy. But it does look really good, and I do wear it on this from time to time. But let me just throw it on one more, which is the No Time to Die style. And finally, this is the No Time to Die style mesh bracelet with the deploying clasp. This is from Heimdallr. They make it's not a replica, it's like an homage of the No Time to Die, but this is a steal. This is $40. And it looks pretty good on this as well. So those are all the different bracelets. It also looks really good on leather. And last but not least, here it is on leather. Although this is actually a suede camo strap, so kind of a different look, but it just looks really, really good on this. And I think that's because the black dial, so in the same way that a Speedy does, the black dial contrasts really well with a brown leather. So that's it. That's my ode to the 2201.50 Planet Ocean. Like I said, it is a watch that the only thing that's going to get me to get rid of it will be if Omega releases the 165.024 as a heritage or as a re-release. But overall, the Planet Ocean 2201.50, fantastic watch. I love it. Thanks so much for watching.